Morning all, on the latest episode of the Turn It Round a Corner podcast. I'm with one of my favourite people in football, Ross Embleton. Ross is someone that over the years, not only have I asked advice of myself, but someone that I've always gone to and asked for advice and learnings for kids football and for Bert. So, Ross, how you doing, mate?
Brilliant, mate. Thanks for that introduction. That means a lot, that. Thank you.
Happy Friday. So, Ross, you're currently at West Ham. Joined this season?
Last February. Yeah.
So what's your official title and what's your role there comprised of?
So my title is Head of Talent ID.
Yeah.
For the academy.
Yeah.
So pretty much overseeing recruitment from 9 to 21 officially. Obviously within certain age groups we've got strengths and areas where we're quite positive. So not a load of focus always goes into those sorts of age groups. It's probably more like longer term succession planning. But essentially what most people would know is like head of recruitment for the academy, really.
Right. Okay. So that's when you say head of recruitment for the academy, is there an age cut off to that?
Yeah, I mean, so now emerging talent's probably quite a common word, isn't it, for people in football? So that sort of little bracket from 18 to 21. And what starts to happen then is obviously if you're signing or we've got good players in those sorts of age groups, you'd like to think or you'd like to have in place a plan for whether you're bringing someone in or it's an internal player that's focused around the first team because they're getting closer.
Okay.
Obviously, there's a long way to go for them to become a Premier League player, but essentially that's the sort of age gap when we start to make plans. So there should be or will be or is, dependent on the club that you look at, a crossover between first team and academy once they start getting to that level.
Yeah.
But essentially 21 is the cut-off point. But like I say, if we're going to sign a 21-year-old, it's going to be something to do with the first team, or it's going to be somewhere close, you know.
Do the boys that are at the say top end 21, do they train with the first team regularly? Is it something that is there a plan in place really from say leaving youth team football at 18? Is there a predefined route, or is it all on the individual? So like, do they finish their youth team football at 18? Obviously they can go into the 21s or the 23s. At what point do you think about going out on loan, or is it all individual dependent?
Yeah, I think it's all of the above probably. I think first of all, like with the boys coming out of the under 18s and going into 21s football, you'd like to think if you're going to become a professional on a professional contract at that stage, that you've had exposure to the under 21s football already. Yeah. So I think that's probably the first stage or consideration, is whether or not they've been able or capable. If they're not, it doesn't mean it's the end, because there might be a longer term plan for them to get where we want them to get to. So I think that's probably like the first stage of consideration. But then once they do go into that 21s, it will be very individual player dependent. Right. So obviously they play on a team every week and it's a team sport, so that's a big part of their progress and how they're getting on. But the team being successful is something that people want, but it's not necessarily the end goal. It is about the individual player. So for argument's sake, this year we've got 7 players that are all out on loan across different levels of the game, which therefore you would argue weakens our under 21s because they're not around. Which then the other side part of your question, that I train with the first team, it obviously means there's less players around that sort of level to train with the first team. But I think at West Ham, I've got 2 different venues. You've got Chadwell Heath, the historic West Ham site, which is predominantly 9 to 18. And then from 18 or for the 21s and the first team, they're based on the same site. So that's obviously really valuable. There's probably a number of clubs across the country, even clubs lower down, that are probably not based like that. So when they're in that sort of environment, if the first team are down on numbers, or if they want to do 11v11, or whatever their training days look like, there is access and opportunity to players. So the answer to your question is short is yes, but obviously it'd be individual player dependent, exactly what their route's going to be and look like.
You've touched on a thing there that I think's missing a lot in football. You stated there that a lot of clubs now, they have their academy away, or their older academy players, should we say, away from the first team venue, and you're missing out on that exposure, right? You're also missing out on those days maybe when the first team are one short and you've got to bring one over that used to happen in a day. Like, I think that's a massive advantage. Is that a playing thing, or is that a space and facility
I think it's
thing?
a number of different things. I think some of it probably is done with the idea of not letting the 21s look like or feel like Premier League players already without being there. So I think it's that with that good intention sometimes. Some of it will be dependent on space and the areas that are accessible to the club. I think the other thing is, do think clubs are much more aware of that now. So the people that I speak to at clubs that are on different sites, they have got a person that works between the two groups, or a pathway manager for if that's the if that's the phrase. So clubs are aware of it and they've got those things in place to support it. But I think what you said there, the bit that's probably missed when you haven't got attachment on the same site or the next pitch, is that the guy that gets injured, and it's gone from having 11v11 to 11v10. We all know there's a fluke sometimes.
I think, 100%.
You know, I think like the whole luck. You know, you've got to be lucky, and the whole luck element of becoming a footballer is being reduced now, and it is more about like the quality and the opportunities that players create for themselves. But I think those luck moments at that top end can sometimes just be the head turner for a manager.
100%.
And a kid comes in and plays in a certain position that he doesn't normally do, or comes in and performs well at that level. All of a sudden, I don't care what anyone says, as a manager, you go, who's this lad? Like, so I think they're probably the big moments that are missed. Yeah,
especially in football now when everyone knows everyone, right? There's data and stats and video footage of everyone, right? And as you say, that sometimes left field player, you know, is going to be missed. And, you know, normally managers used to like that, right? Someone that no one knows, a little bit off the cuff or a little bit unknown. You touched on a really good point there, though, about not letting an under 23 or an under 18 player think they've made it. Obviously, you know, the washbag generation, whatever they're called these days. But how do you manage that at a massive club like West Ham? Obviously, you've got lots of players on the books, lots of kids on the books. Obviously, a Premier League club, big fan base, lots of money. You know, in at that level, how do you manage those kids these days that are maybe come out of youth team football, got a couple of years pro? How do you manage that they haven't actually made it as yet, and they've still got a lot of work to do?
I think the reality bit is probably the easiest place to start, and I can't speak for other clubs, but I think when you deal with the players, the young people, appropriately, and there's clarity around like where they stand, I think you're probably the same as me, like when you was a kid and still wanting to be a footballer, if you like. But it wasn't always a great deal of clarity around where you sat, and you know, you'd wait to get retained or released or whatever, and it'd be the big shock, the big moment, whether it was good or bad. I think that's got better, so I do think that that expectation is managed a little bit more. You mentioned about loans, which is probably something we might talk about a bit more, but I think now what's starting to happen as well is so many players are being exposed to league football that there will be an internal realisation. Whether the boys still walk around with a wash bag and drive a nice car, like if they earn good money, that's what they're going to do.
Yeah, that's the reality.
That's what they do if they worked in the city. So
of course.
I think that's there and it's helping. But I think now if you look round at your mates and he's gone out and had a fouled League Two loan, doesn't mean for one breath that he's not going to be a footballer. It doesn't mean he's not going to be a Premier League player, but it means that there's a little bit of reality attached to it. Or not necessarily your mate, but the kid who's a year, 2 years older that you thought, this guy's proper. There's now like that element of realisation. So I think that part of it also manages it, you know. So the clarity from the coaches or the people that are making decisions towards them and how that's communicated, but also, like I say, that loan opportunity will help not just the boys that go out, but the ones that don't or are waiting to.
And obviously, in your department, there's yourself, there's Nicky Shorey, and there's Carlton Cole, right? Carlton Cole manages the loans. How important for you at West Ham? Obviously, we've just had a conversation off camera about an individual that hasn't gone out on loan yet because there's an individual program set to him in regards to, you know, strength and conditioning, for instance. How much of a big thing do you find now that getting them out is really important, that they don't stay in under 23s or under 21 football too long.
Yeah, I think it's massive. I think when you look at like some of the top performing clubs, that's not necessarily the top clubs, but the top performing clubs, or the ones that produce a lot of players, whether that's in the league or for their first teams, they're utilising that opportunity really early. So then their 21s are not 21s.
Nah.
They're not under 21s anymore. And I think I wasn't in the academy system at the time, but I think that was probably the reason why it went from, you just said it there, like 23s to 21s. Yeah. Like 23s don't exist no more, because people were looking at that landscape and going, hang on a minute, this kid's 23, like he's playing, ain't been out, he ain't played men's football yet. Like,
well, nowadays it's totally different, wouldn't it? If you finish your YT at 18 and you weren't in around the first,
then you're done
later, mate. You're off. Like,
and I think that's got better. And then to add on to that, so I think now you look at a lot of the bigger clubs, or like I say, the good clubs that produce players, is their under 21s will be younger. Yeah. They will be under 19s with a couple of under 20s in there. And then obviously they'll have not necessarily their higher flyers, but the boys that need it. And I think there's so many different aspects to a boy becoming a top footballer, or a footballer, rather than getting obsessed with them being Premier League players, but having a football career in terms of them going out on loan, like being in a men's environment, playing for 3 points every week, but then living on your own. Like having to fend for yourself, having to cook your own dinner, maybe sometimes having to wash your own kit, like the level that you're going out, the expectation and the understanding of what it is to be a footballer at that level. You still earn a good living, of course. Still live a nice lifestyle, still play at a good level, but the realities of being in different environments, I think, is massive. And that might take 2, 3, 4 of those opportunities. One or two of them might go wonky, might go wrong. Of course. But then you see the character of the player as to how much he bounces back or how much he wants to.
And I think that's just important as a football, right? As I say, the character of coming out of, possession-based development football into, players in the lower leagues. Obviously, the money's got a lot better, but people playing for that win bonus, right? And if you're in the way, you're gonna get moved out the way. When they go
people's jobs, isn't it? Do you know what I mean? In terms of like whatever level of person, whether you talk about the player or you talk about the coaches and the management team, like everything's so short term. That people need success there and then. So, like I say, I for me have seen a number of boys who I would look at their loans and go, no, that's probably a success. Like, he didn't play very well, or he didn't play loads of games, but let's see what happens to him now. And then you get to see whether or not they've got the bit to get through that. And like I say, for me, it's about looking at a football career before you become a Premier League player. I worked at another club before, and everyone used to reference it as like your career before your career. It was like what you done before you got into the first team and played for that club,
And how important, Ross, is it the level or the club? So you're trying to get a boy out on loan. Is it right? We need this kid to go and play in a conference to start with, or League Two, or is it we need to go and find a team that suits his?
I think different per player. Right, like you touched on it right at the beginning, and that's the beauty of player development. Is that I think when you look at that, there has to be a plan for the player. It's not going to be perfect, and some of it might even be picked to try and trip him up a little bit while he's out for 6 months, for example. But I think that's the really important bit: is picking what is right and what is needed for that player. Is he a player that's unbelievable in possession and can pass it and you can do a lot of work with the ball, but needs work out of possession? He's, understanding about when to play, when not to play, all the little other things that come with being, that might be his area that he needs improving. So one of the really good things that I know a lot of clubs look at now is like data or information to support, the type of manager that he's going to play for. Does he play young players? Well, if he don't send him there. So there's a bigger plan to rather than just like send him off into the big wide world, which again might just be one of the routes, but it has to be dependent on the individual.
So you just made a point there, is obviously you're higher up the food chain in regards to football, but are managers still as open to taking kids on loan?
I think it's dependent on the person. I think like. Once upon a time, I can say that I stood in the dugout, and I would have always wanted to give
youngsters a chance,
a younger one or someone an opportunity to to try to develop them, because that was my background.
Yeah.
So even though I was working with senior players and trying to get 3 points on a Saturday, I still always have and still have now that developmental area. And I think there's definitely still top managers out there that have got that passion for young players. So I think, but again, probably from their perspective, it's about the player. So rather than just going, I want a really young right back, you need to make sure you're getting the right one that can. And of course, we don't know that sometimes until they walk through the door and start playing it, as to whether they're adaptable enough to cope. But I do think there is. I think there's a number of them, because there's so many good reasons. Like, it's a proud moment to see a young player progress and develop. But then at the same time, if you're taking a player on loan, the likelihood is budget-wise that can 100%. Be lesser, and it can help your bigger scale budget, and help you to maybe get a bigger hitter at the level in. When you've got players that can, 5 players in your squad that you're allowed to manipulate that as well.
I also think as well, it's a very, very hard process to get a kid through all the age groups, all the stages, and get into a Premier League team, right?
Yeah.
So not all of them are going to have a career in the Premier League. I think it also adds a little bit of attachment, doesn't it? You take a kid, I don't know, let's pick Stevenage, take a kid, for instance, from West Ham, does really well. 2 seasons down the line, if you don't make it at West Ham, there's a good chance that you'll get him back as well, because he's already got that attachment with the club. He's
and
enjoyed
you
himself.
Something there as well about like the drastic shift and change that can come in a year or two. You go out and do really well. Goes in, plays 1 game for the first team. Makes an error, or he's part of a difficult moment for the like that might be written off by a manager, especially 100%. If it's a manager that doesn't want to work with young players. That cutthroat element of it can dictate someone's career in like the click of your fingers, can't it? So, but I do think that. I think they say never fall in love with a loan player as a fan, but I think there's definite credibility to that player maybe coming back one day.
I look at it, obviously, we'll get on to it, but both of us got massive affiliation with Leyton Orient. And, like, over the last couple of seasons, I think, like, Idris El Mazouni, like, a loan player, we got him once, everyone fell in love with him. As you say, don't fall in love with a loan player. He came back again. Like, there was probably, I don't know how he got him back the second year. Obviously, he's doing really well, playing week in, week out for Oxford in the Championship. But, like, there's that attachment. He loved it so much that, the story goes that he actually actively asked to go back to Leyton Orient, and it suited his personal circumstances, and he knew that he was going to play. So, you're in the academy world, and you're working with Nicky Short and Carlton Cole. What does your week to look like? Well, I know obviously it changes
course, but I think one of the things that I've loved so much since I went into recruitment has been, I don't know if flexibility is the right word, but like you feel like you've got a bit more freedom. So if and when I was the coach, like I'd be on my way into work at 6:30 every morning. And then I'd be in the car on the way home at, I don't know, even if it was 4 o'clock, it's quite a long day.
Yeah, of course.
A full working day, most people that are listening would refer to, do you know what I mean? But
normal day.
Like this anticipation sometimes in football that you get in at 9 and leave at 1. For me, it weren't.
No.
So I think
players are definitely, obviously, there's longer days, but once the flip side of that is obviously managers and coaches and whatever, that they're working long
hours. And I think the art of some of that is probably to manage that, and some of the best people that I worked with were able to go, no, we're done. I don't sit here doing any more.
Can you really manage that though, Rob?
I didn't at all, but the good ones that I've come across have been able to go, no, we're done now. Like, we worked really hard while we're here, but now we're on our way home. And that was conversations with my missus.
That's an easier said than done comment, right?
Yeah.
Like, I look at business world. If I had a business deal on the table and I wanted to close it before Friday, like you just said about your missus, Charlotte would say to me, I'll be there tomorrow. But it's like when you're trying to sign a player, right? If you're chasing something and the transfer window, they're sat at the end of the rainbow, it's very hard at the same time to turn your phone off and
absolutely
sort of disconnect.
And as the coach, like as the one who's got his head on the chopping block, like you're forever sitting there going, have I done it all?
Yeah.
Which, like, there comes a point when you have, do you know what I mean? Or you can't do no more. So, but I think there's a lot of things that come with that. There's being comfortable in your own skin to know when you've made that decision and what that feels like. And then I think the other side of that as well is, you know, if you've had clarity or you've had like success in your career, normally means that you're in a position where financially you're quite comfortable. For me, I never had a playing career, so when I went into coaching and the opportunities that I got, when my neck was on the line, it was always like, oh, if this does go wrong, I'm not only just losing a game of football, but where's the next job come from? Do you know what I mean? So I just forever wanted to make the most of an opportunity. So, but I do think, going back to the original question, is that like in terms of my working week, like I cover a lot of games. Like when I was at Colchester, I was out 5-6 games a week. Not every night, but I try and do like 2 games on a Saturday, or a game on a Friday lunchtime and a game on a Friday evening around the academy stuff. So what that then does is it gives you opportunity to manage the week. Like say when you was coaching, I went out and watched a boy at Arsenal under 21s on the Tuesday night. Well, I knew that next morning I had to be in it. So you had to manage that.
And also you've done your day work as well. So like you're not managing. You haven't got that healthy life and work balance, have you? Really?
Not in any way, shape, or form. So for me now, it's great because I have 2 or 3, predominantly like 3 days in the week when I'm in the office. Which can be a number of different things, whether that's my own reports, looking at other people's. I run quite a big CPD program at West Ham for our scouts, and like,
just to explain to people what CPD was.
Continual professional development, which most people have in their careers, whether it's football or somewhere else, is one of the things that we looked at, or they were doing well before I got here, but we've added a few different more elements just to try and upskill people on what West Ham wanted or what the expectations were, and to expose our scouts or our staff to different things, different ideas, different ways of going about their jobs. So it could be planning that. So like I say, I try to have like 3 days in the office where I'm doing the different work that I need to do in order to manage the department. But obviously it's great because I can manage coming in a little bit later or working from home or whatever it might be around the games that I go to as well. Because one of the things I got bogged down with when I first joined the job was like managing the department so much. I was like thinking, I ain't been watching players. Like,
games,
when ultimately that's the job. So for me, it's just about trying to get that balance right. I don't try and cover the amount of games I was doing as the Lone Ranger at Colchester, but I do still try and maintain like that. So I've got a knowledge of what's out there.
So,
and then, just like the games program, just for people who don't know, can be like Monday night for under 21s football, Friday night for under 21s football. You've got Tuesday games for non-league and league football. Obviously the same thing on a Saturday, but under 18s football runs on a Saturday morning. So real mixture of different stuff.
So we talk about like progression stuff. Where ideally you doing your job, what's the end goal for someone in your job right now?
What in terms of
like where will they go? Is that like a director of football role, or is that an operation?
I think the thing is now, like academies are so vast and so big and football clubs are, aren't they?
Of course.
But there's like so many more opportunities than when I think back to when I first started. So now I think the directions are endless. Like you mentioned Colton Cole being at West Ham, like he manages our loans program. Like that's a job in itself now. For people, and like the top clubs have got 5. It's a department. It's not just someone.
Wasn't there a stat last year or the year before that Chelsea had 40 people out on loan? Or
and when I worked at Swindon, I remember we had 3 boys on loan from Chelsea, and we had Eddie Newton was our assigned loans manager. So he came and visited the boys and visited us and met with us, and they were very thorough in the way that they did it. But they also had like Paulo Ferreira and whoever else going abroad to manage their big so it's a department itself. So I think like that's one angle you can look at, because I think it gives you real interaction with players as well as managing a department. You mentioned about sporting director of football. And there's a lot of people now with an eye on that in the positions that I'm working in. The beauty that has evolved over the last number of years is there's opportunities to do courses and qualifications to help you get there as well. I haven't got an answer to mine, because I think the job that I do, whether it's at the club that I do now or it's, you know, it evolves into other things as your career does over the years, there's opportunities to manage that 100%. Department on a big scale. So sometimes I think that's definitely my career, not always out of choice, but the football moves you in different directions, doesn't it? And your family life or your state of the life you're in moves you in to different things. But I think the beauty thing now is with football is that there are so many opportunities out there.
It's definitely rounding your CV though, isn't it? Because you've done academy coaching, first team coaching, been assistant manager, like recruitment for first team, and now obviously you're doing academy. You are widening, your network, and obviously someone that you know very, very well, Matty Howard at Leyton Orient, same thing. I remember listening to his interview. I see him in the gym the other day, and he said that it was a job to sort of round his football CV and do something different and give him a different angle on things. And as you say, the loans market's growing, that whole football management piece is growing. Yeah. So as we sign off a little bit of West Ham, how have you found, I suppose, you worked for a number of London clubs, but how do you find the sort of the scale of working for West Ham? Massive club, although it pains me to say that. Big new stadium. Yep. Like they've had some success in recent years. Obviously, Moyes winning the Tin Pot Trophy. I won't say that, the Tin Pot Trophy, but winning the European League. How do you find that being under it's a microscope, right?
Yes, it is
a big club.
Yeah,
obviously, you're a touch removed being in the academy, but obviously there's still going to be. There's always a microscope on a club and what they're doing, what they're not doing, how they're doing it, are they doing it the right way? Yeah. Like, how have you found that?
I think the thing now, because there's no hiding place in anything. You do forget football, but in life. Yeah. There's always an expectation to what anybody's doing. Yeah. And if you go like, all right, we're prioritising going and recruiting in this area. Yeah. Someone will go, well, we're not doing it in that one. So there's always that critical eye and expectation on you. So I think it's, again, with whatever role, whatever level you're working at, it's about managing that and focusing on what is important to you. But for me, working at a club like West Ham, it's understanding what the values or the direction of the club, the expectation of the club, because ultimately that's what dictates it. Do you know what I mean? Because some guy who's a supporter will have incredible value to the club, but he don't call the shots. He don't pay your salary. So you've got an expectation and a job to do. And one of the things that I've probably learned over my career, and I always remember working closely with Chris Ramsey, who was my coach when I was a kid, and has remained like a good friend of mine. He was always like, until you got the keys to the club, until you're the owner, someone else is above you telling you what you should be doing. 100%. So you've got a job to do for that club. So if they tell you to get it as a coach and kick it off every time you get it, that's what you got to coach. No matter what you think. And I think that's probably one thing that I'm quite proud of, is that over my career I've worked for different people, different clubs in different ways, and tried to been able to adapt. Whether I've been successful at it or not remains to be seen or be up for debate, but to do that. So I think that's a big thing here, is the passion, the history of what this club is about means so much to so many people. And I know that's the same for you as a Leyton Orient fan, and me as a Leyton Orient fan, and people that support Arsenal, Tottenham. But West Ham is like that good old fashioned feel about it. And I think it's important to make sure that you stay true to that. Now, I'll have different ideas of where we can get success from, but it's always has to, I think, come back to that club and then the direction that the person that's in those senior positions is driving us. That I've got a job to do for that as well.
Would you say, Ross, since you've come into the club, because I don't want you to comment on this, but I would say my friends have said that over the last few years that Moyes didn't play kids, right? And I think people made a big thing that he didn't play kids. And then you talk about the history, and West Ham fans are very proud of their history and the homegrown players that they've had, the Joe Coles, the Carricks, the list is endless. But I would say over the last few years there hasn't been as many.
No, I agree.
So is there a bigger push, would you say, now at West Ham, or is it just part of the process, right? You're going to have peaks and troughs of years when you get a lot through the system, and there's somewhere you get none through the system, and obviously ultimately it's dependent on the manager, right?
And I think that's the reality, isn't it? The reality is that some years you're going to have some that are better than others. Sometimes you're going to have a manager and this is way outside of my pay scale
Yeah.
or anything that I'm capable of influencing. But sometimes you're going to have a manager that's employed to get you out of trouble
Yeah.
or to keep you in the league. This isn't just specific to West Ham, but in clubs in general. But so therefore, the focus and responsibility of giving them young players a chance isn't probably going to exist.
No.
But I think the one thing you touched on it there when you said about the history and the focus on pushing people through. That's the bit that's refreshing at our place, is that people are still passionate about their young players, and to be honest, they like get disappointed when they don't play or they don't get the opportunity. But I think we were talking before we started, weren't we, about like the amount of debuts at a really young age that are not existing.
That's
at the
a brilliant
moment.
stat, really. You should mention.
Yeah, like we looked at like where the debuts are being made or where players are coming through and getting opportunities in the Premier League at the moment. And it's very, very reduced at the minute of a 17 and 18-year-old. So like the Rooney and Milner like thought process of getting in the first team and staying in it at 17, 18 doesn't really exist. I think there's only 3 Premier League debuts this year. Tyler Debden, Southampton, Kobe Mainu last year. Me and you talked about the boy Hinshelwood, didn't we, at Brighton? But outside of that, there's not many that are actually getting in and staying in at 18.
As you say, normally now they're coming in at 17, 18 and then disappearing again for a couple of years.
So sometimes I think, like I'm sure we'll be guilty of it if people listen to our conversations at work, is that he's not getting a chance. He's had to go out on loan, but just his pathway to get in. And you look at some of the, like, everyone made a big noise about how successful Liverpool were getting players in the team. Like when you look at some of the Liverpool boys that have gone in and stayed in, they actually got in a bit later. So I think it's just understanding how and what it's going to look like per player, like we started with, really, to getting them in there. And that passion from West Ham, everyone that works there, is a real desire to make sure that that's continued. It hasn't happened as much as everyone would have liked, but I think over the next few years, there's opportunities for a number of the boys to definitely get close.
One thing I would say as an outsider looking in before we move on about the old school, I think West Ham make a really good sort of they lead by example about getting the old boys back and doing the hospitality, and obviously, you know, Carlton Cole is part of your department, does some of that. But one thing I would say is, like, as you say, the past and the past players are really celebrated.
Yeah, they are. They're valued. And there's a number of people at the club. Kenny Brown, academy manager, Kev Keane, one of the senior coaches now around the 18s and the 21s. Zavon Hines works with the 18s. We've got Freddie Sears has just come back in. He's working with the other age groups.
Where's he now, Freddie Sears? He's still playing, isn't he?
Yeah, he's playing for Chatham or something
Chatham,
like
that's
that.
it. Yeah, I see him come off the bench the other day for Chatham. That's it.
But yeah, like you said there about the guys that are there on a match day, I know Matty Everington, James Collins, people like that, Jimmy Walker are around that. So that's that ambassadorial side of it. Elliot Ward, I know, was doing the 14s here, now works at Colchester. He does some of that as well. So yeah, I do. I'm sure a number of clubs are doing it, but I see that at face value.
I always see that though. West Ham seem to be leading the way. They're making a big thing about it.
Yeah, and the history means a lot to most clubs, but you can feel it when you walk in the door at West Ham. Definitely.
So if we move back a step, Ross, obviously your last job previous was at Colchester.
Yep.
What was you doing at Colchester?
Head of recruitment. So that was first team recruitment.
Yeah.
Because I'm passionate about young players.
Yeah.
I sort of managed the academy recruitment staff, and played a big part, especially in the older age groups, the 18s and 21s, and the boys that were out on loan. But my predominant focus was the first team.
So how, obviously, there's a lot, I suppose, a lot that's massively different. But where would you say what's the biggest sort of difference between obviously that role to kids? I suppose everything's about the now, right?
Yeah, two elements for that for me really about the actual job was like the appreciation and the use of data. I think that was something that I'd been properly exposed to once I went there, and then the pressure of it. Like I wasn't standing on the touchline, but it would still be churning in my stomach while I was sitting watching a League 2 game somewhere else, or a National League game, or under 21s game, and then you look at your phone and Colchester are getting beat. Or I never try to use my phone while I'm scouting, but there'd always be some clever clog sitting next to me going, "Oh, you're more of a 1-0 down." But I was waiting until the end of the game to look at that bit. So yeah, it's that, and like I always call it now, like the Monday morning factor. The Monday morning factor doesn't exist in my life at the moment.
Yeah.
Because there's a bigger plan to everything, and I'm detached from what happens with West Ham on a Saturday. I want us to do well, and it helps us, but it's not my priority. I can't influence it, so I don't live with a Monday morning factor anymore.
No.
Whereas at Colchester, more often than not, the Monday morning factor meant that we hadn't won, and you needed to help. The beauty for me was I could try to lend my support to the manager in question because I'd lived it and I'd felt it, but that part doesn't exist, which is beautiful for me at the moment.
You just touched on it, right? Like, if in your current role you might be looking at a right back who's 16 and the plan for him is in 4 years' time, 5 years' time, you're trying to find a right back for Colchester and he's just had a stinker and you know they've lost. There's more focus, right? There's pressure on everyone. There's eyes on you. There's pressure on the manager. So when you went into that job, Ross, who was the first team manager?
Wayne Brown was the first team manager, and it was
alternate half.
It was very difficult. So Brownie had just kept the club up. Done a really good job. It was that season when Orient and Colchester were really close to the drop just after Kenny Jackett had left the Orient. And,
I went to that game.
I think I did as well. I sat behind the goal. And I was out of work at the time, but they stayed up.
Who scored that goal?
Ruel scored a really good goal, and then Ethan Coleman scored a really late one, didn't it? Matty was in charge at the time. So I went in the summer, sort of got the job in the May, and everyone was on holiday during that off season. And then me and Wayne were sort of really thrown together. I didn't know each other. So I had to spend the first little while trying to get a grip of how he wanted to play, the type of characters that he wanted, and that was you know, it was an invaluable part of my job. I had numerous amounts of managers that I worked with, all very different. And to try and acclimatise to each one and provide them, one with what they wanted, but what the club wanted as well, was really difficult. So me and Wayne spent a lot of the summer recruiting, but also trying to get to know what it was he wanted, learning it on the job really, because it was so close to the start of the season.
You touched on something really interesting there about like what the manager wants, what the club wants. Obviously, in your line of work, are you getting sort of mandates and requirements from the chairman as well as the first team manager?
So at Colchester, Robbie had a real idea of his plan, what he wanted in terms of, you know, he's passionate about young players. So he wanted his academy graduates to get exposure. So there was a responsibility for the manager. But make no secret of it, his club's been struggling for 4 or 5 years now. So at the same time, he also wanted success and to get away from it. Get away from that run or period and league table finish that they seem to having. But obviously, egos in football and people's agendas and people's own careers and job opportunities are dependent on how they do and what they want. So what was very difficult was Robbie always really outlined to the managers and the coaches, this is where we're trying to go as a club. This is where you've got a little bit of scope to manipulate it. But also, we understand and appreciate what you need. But marrying that up was really difficult because there was so much change. Well, especially when you're the manager, me and you work together for a year. We have 2 or 3 transfer windows, and we can start to get somewhere. But when it changes in 8 weeks' time, and then it changes and then another 8, it's very, very difficult to try and get that balance.
And also, when I think what you've just touched on, when you're further down the table, that makes it even more difficult, doesn't it? Because obviously, at the top of the table, you're going for stuff, and you know, there's no ideas thrown around. When you're down the bottom, like it's a little bit panic stations, right? And do you want to put a kid in? Do you want to expose them to that? Do you like that? That is hard. So how long was Wayne Brown in the?
So Wayne was in there until about October, sort of. Not far off, probably a little bit shorter than where we are in the season now. Got off to a good start first couple of games, and then very, very difficult. Very difficult to score goals. The balance of the squad wasn't great, in my opinion. Wayne knew exactly what he wanted in terms of the style that he wanted to play. But a couple of the key members of that group weren't fit or weren't performing, especially some of the more senior ones in that team. And he didn't win enough games ultimately, you know. And I think one of the things that's always existed at any club at the bottom end of the league is once you start getting very, very close to that dotted line, even if it's after 15 games, people panic and need to try and do something right, which is do something to change it, and that's what happened.
Well, it's as you say, we touched on it. It's people's jobs, right? It's livelihoods. You fall out of the league, obviously. You know, it has massive repercussions for a lot of things. Obviously, ultimately, finance is probably top of that.
And we're probably not. We understand it differently, but it can change the face of a whole club forever. By the way, like when you look at some of the clubs now that are in the National League and that, so hard to come back from. You look at like Rochdale, Oldham, Scunthorpe's like even more. You know, and the history of those clubs that just
Scunthorpe, Conference North now.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. So it's a very, very difficult one, and a real, like, obviously a real precarious position for everyone.
Well, I just think, as you say, it changes the landscape. You know, people now get caught up in, you know, the Hollywood glamour of Wrexham. Yeah. But before they come along, it was 10, 12 seasons to get out of the conference. It can be a graveyard, right?
Oh, I mean, you most likely at the game, but I remember when we beat them away.
Mate, it's one of my favourite.
Unbelievable.
It's one of my favourite away days ever.
Yeah, me too. That was when I always remember
Brophy and Bob.
We're really in the thing there, because they were flying at the time.
They were flying.
People forget. But the long thingy behind it was that I remember going there thinking, wow, like this gaff's like, it was old. It needed a little new lease of life. But I remember thinking, this is such a big club and she's been here forever. Like,
exactly.
And that's the precarious position when you're, what is it now, Colchester, Swindon, Morecambe, them sort of clubs. That's what you're facing. So then changes do get made, don't they?
Yeah, and also like you've mentioned about his sort of blueprint for the club, that'll go away, because if you don't get back up within a couple of years, your academy's gone anyway.
Exactly right.
So like his whole sort of ethos is shattered if you don't get away from that. So Wayne Brown got the sack. Was it Matt Everton to come in?
No, so after Wayne, me and Steve Ball took the team for a couple of games. And Matt Broomfield came in. It was his first role. Yeah. The most positive man I've ever met in football.
But we had conversations like this before, right? He was a very intelligent lad, wasn't he? Because at Wickham, when he'd done numerous degrees while he was playing and studied all the time,
and he'd been coaching already as part of that. Obviously, once he'd stopped playing, he's part of Gareth Ainsworth's coaching team. Yeah. Infectious guy. Like, when I say all of those things, that's not taken away from his football part. Yeah. Like, the club was under pressure, and I've never met anybody so positive in all my life. Like, he could come in on a Monday morning and lift people. He didn't need that support from myself and the other people around. He just needed a little bit of like some new ideas, or what about this, what about that, in terms of how the team might go and try and play, that sort of stuff. We just bounced stuff off of each other. But I was really lucky because on that perspective, because he came in, he didn't have an assistant ready to come in with him. Yeah, I stayed with him for about a month. Right. And that was unbelievable for someone in my position to be with Matt every day, coaching, going on a coach to away games, understanding what he wanted, how he wanted it. When I went back into my role, it was like, spot on, got it. Like, I know exactly what he's looking for, the type of characters that he wanted. Yeah, that was brilliant. So obviously Matty had, when I say success, he took us away from trouble and we were stabilised. And then he got the Wickham job, which he's obviously doing really, really well with at the moment.
I watched him when he went.
I went to the Orient game, and they were excellent.
Yeah, really good.
Great to see, because Tomo, really good people, So obviously then that meant for the good in terms of how well things had gone. It was another change.
Didn't you go back in again?
And then Ben Garner come in, which was a real different dynamic, because Matt was very much about characters and like the type of people that he was signing. Ben was played in a different style and looked for a different type of quality in the players that he wanted.
Ben Garner had a career? Did he have a career?
He'd been at, as a coach, he'd been at Palace. Right. And had real success going through the age groups and been around the first team and that at Palace. And then he had a tough stint at Bristol Rovers. Right. It didn't go particularly well for him, but then he done really well at Swindon. He lost in the playoff final on penalties. I think that might have been during COVID. Just after. That was just after. And then he come to us. That was tough. He again finished the season okay. Started the season not so great. Then then there was another change. That was when Matty Everington went in.
Right. So
and then
all these managers though,
yeah,
Ross, everyone obviously personalities change, but did everyone had a different way of playing and a different?
I would say after Wayne, Matt's style wasn't drastically different.
Yeah.
They were very methodical. We had a transfer window. He was very much built on like the type of characteristics and people that he wanted to bring in, to help us out the scenario that we were in.
Because watching that Wickham team the other week, if they could play and get it into the front man, they'd play. But
really good decision making.
If they needed to spin it in behind and get after it, they spun it in behind and got after it.
And I feel like if they go up against like Rotherham and they need to have a tear up, like they're going to have them qualities in their team as well. So like Matt's was a really good balance. The drastic change probably came once Ben came in terms of just the way he wanted the team to play. More football, more with the ball. We went young, we were too young in that transfer window. All with the best intentions of Ben being able to work with young players to develop them, but there was too many. There wasn't enough that understood the level. And then obviously that change come and Matty come in, and it was a bit of a strange scenario for Matty because he done so well as the interim. Yeah, got the job, and then like the wheels come off. Do you know what I mean? And it didn't go well.
Amazing how that happens.
Crazy. But the difficult part from a recruitment perspective was we then spent however many weeks it was planning for Matty's January. Yeah. And then on the 2nd of January, Matty's gone and Danny and Nicky Cowley come in, which was then a big shift and change again. You know, so all the work that we'd done, and we ended up signing Connor Wilkinson. Obviously, I'd worked with Connor. Yeah. Connor Wilkinson was a Matty Everington centre forward choice. Of course. And then all of a sudden he comes in and he's not really wanted by the Cowleys, but the deal was already done, you know. So all of this madness was in a 2-year period. Yeah.
But the Cowleys then probably went back to the more sort of front foot aggressive football.
Yeah, right? People that know the level. Yeah. An eye on the younger players because they knew the responsibility of going and working at Colchester, but very much like players that know the level and are capable of the level. Yeah. Very organised in the way that they worked.
Yeah. So there's a lot there that obviously to get our teeth into, but obviously you've had massive experience recruiting in a quite a troublesome period, right?
Yeah.
For different managers. So you've obviously widened your network because you're not looking at the same type of player all the time.
Yeah.
What were things that you think as just added to your sort of football knowledge? Like where was your growth in that period?
Yeah, conviction in decision making.
Right. Well, because you've got to sell it because they're all different characters.
You've got to sell it. You've got to back it. Right. I think that's one of the biggest things when I was coaching and managing, the stuttering and delaying of decisions, whether that be at recruitment scout level or when you're waiting for the deal to get done and over the line. Someone make a decision. Like put your neck on the line. Like have some balls to decide. Like we're all going to get them wrong. And don't get me wrong. Like I've got some wrong when I was managing. I've definitely got some wrong when I've been recruiting. Yeah. But if you ain't got belief in your decisions, then who is going to have it? So I think that was a big one for me. And we pursued a number of different players at different stages of their career that I can look at now and say, do you know what? That was a success. Yeah, I didn't want that one, but I backed the manager on that one because it was the right thing to do and what he wanted. If it did or didn't work, he's still willing to. My big thing is that I said it earlier about unless you've got the keys to the building, you're not the most important person in the club. So if the manager or the chairman puts his foot down and says that's what I want, okay, no problem. We'll record the decisions. We'll know, but there's no I hate to say I told you so. We go with that, and if that's the decision making, we're all in. Yeah. So I think that was a real big part of it. And then
I know you touched on it before you go on to the next part, Ross, but I know you touched on it earlier, and I know we've spoke about it beforehand about the data at Colchester. Yeah. Was that eyes on the player and data then?
Yeah.
You came to that decision?
One of the things that I really liked about data, and I still do now, and I'm still trying to learn more about it, is that it doesn't ever swallow me up because I like watching players and following up on it. But one of the things it really did for me as a bit of a lone ranger at Colchester, I had two lads who covered games for us, but not in great depth. Yeah, was like it narrowed down the field for me. Yeah. So I go right. I really like Christian Wheeler. He's a left back, and he's this type of player. Right. So what the data would then do for me would home in on similar players,
Yeah.
similar level. Right? Can we afford them? Right? No, we can wipe them off the list. Then.
Yeah.
We might love them. They might be the best player in the
Yeah.
league, but if we can't get them, we need to move on pretty quickly.
Yeah.
So rather than me like going out every week and trying to watch Mansfield on one Saturday and Stevenage the week after, that scaled it down to saying, right, well, the manager wants this. These are the 3 or 4 players that might look like it.
Yeah.
Oh, right, we can't get them, but this one's similar.
Yeah.
So that's what I really liked about it. And obviously, the more access you get to data with the Brentfords and the Brightons, where there's loads made of it, that influences decisions in a bigger way, but they're bigger, more powerful resources or sources of that sort of thing. So that's what I really liked about it.
Yeah,
I really liked about it there. And then the other side of the decision making, or the what I would class as real success for us as at Colchester, was my belief in youth development. Like, we took Joe Taylor, that had very little exposure, and I'd actually seen him in my second game working for Colchester,
right,
for Peterborough against Stevenage.
Yeah.
And from then on, I bashed on about him, and it was only 3 winters later that we managed to get him.
Yeah.
And he hardly had any exposure really, but he'd come in 17 goals before Christmas and then went back and off on loan again. That was unbelievable success on that level. But then we also had again, like the youth development side of it, we had a focus on players who were coming out of other clubs. Jay Mingy, coming out of Portsmouth. Jaden Fevrier coming out as a released scholar, 18-year-old at West Ham. Osama Ashley, who, while I was Orient manager, I actually see him playing for West Ham's 21s on trial after being released from AFC Wimbledon. We took all 3 of them and ended up selling those 3 players for like half our budget, really.
Amazing.
Which is, people won't like that, especially if you're Colchester fans. It didn't really move them away from the bottom of the league, but that's not your job. That's not your job, is it?
No. Your job is to supply,
especially when it comes to finding talent that we're going to sell on. So that was something that really excited me.
What would you say? Would you say now that the part of you is glad that you're not in that day-to-day bit, just the Monday morning?
Yeah, no, I wouldn't say that, because I feel like one of the things I've been able to do over my career is adapt. And say, right, I was the under-9s coach at Leyton Orient. And I know a lot of people always looked at me and probably still think of me as that, or the community coach, which I'm proud of. But I know that I've adapted over a period of time to be able to do both.
And that's a great skill, right?
I think so. And like I say, for me, I'm proud of it. What other people think ain't really up to me. But that's what I really like. So I feel like if it was a direction I needed to or wanted to go back into, I'd be really happy and comfortable in it. The other side of it is, one thing I don't miss is the Monday morning when you're next on the line. That's the difference. So as the recruiter, I no problem. As the coach or the manager, absolutely no chance.
Do you ever miss that pressure though?
No.
Nah.
I've never
because some people thrive on it, right?
Yeah, and I've got mates that I'll say to them like, oh, well, are you doing this job? And I really miss the 3 points on a Saturday. Like, in actual fact, I hated the 3 points on a Saturday. It's the worst. I used to say to people, I've got the best job in the world until 1:30 on a Saturday when the boys go out to warm up.
I will get to that point.
So I've got no. In actual fact, now, like, I watch a coaching session and I'm a bit like, I'm done now after 10 minutes. I've probably done quite a few of them in my life anyway, but I'm so happy and excited about recruitment now, and where else I can go, that the coaching bit don't excite me no more.
Yeah, I get that. And then, as you say, you're doing right now as well in this role. You're doing new things, right? You're seeing new players, so it's exciting. So before that, obviously, Leyton Orient.
Yep.
As you said, you started as community coach.
Yep.
Yeah. Was that just part-time, Ross?
Yeah, straight from school. Tying people's shoelaces and picking kids up and making sure they turned up and whatever it was, paid their £1.50 every week. But just trying to give kids a good time. Yeah. Like, it was an opportunity really for me. Like, Dad went to me, or Chris Ramsey as well, at like 15, 16. Yeah. You're not going to be a footballer, you're not going to be a footballer at this club. Yeah. Here's an opportunity to go and earn some money and do something you might be good at. So, and by the way, like, just started as that, and probably really most of my career has continued like that. Just throw yourself into the opportunity you've been given.
Great way to,
yeah.
So you went from obviously a community coach, so you had different spells in the academy, and how did you how did you find yourself like progressing through the years at the academy to being part of the first team setup?
Well, always again, like a little bit like that, throwing myself into it. So never, and I can honestly say this hand on heart, never ever have I gone into any job at any club that I've worked at, and there's been quite a few of them now, where I've gone, yeah, I'll do this, and then in a minute I'll be that.
Yeah.
I just wanted to really enjoy it, and I think other than when I was the manager, I always enjoyed whatever role I was in.
Yeah.
Again, all the other clubs I've been at, like enjoyed that moment.
Yeah.
And I talk to so many people now that go to me, I want to be this and I'm going to be that. And I think, I just enjoy the ride. Like I say, other than when I was managing, I've always done that. So, yeah, like the drive to work with and all the players, by the time I came out the centre of excellence and left to go to Tottenham, every single player from 9 to 16, it was a player that I'd had a say in.
That's amazing.
Or part of their development.
Yeah, amazing. What made you leave to go Spurs, Ross?
It was around the time of the Olympics. So,
was you still part time at Orient at the time?
No. So this was I was centre of excellence or academy manager, as everyone would know it now. It was around the time of the Olympics. So the Eastway had gone in terms of the training ground, and we were training at place up the A12, Ford's place. The academy was at I Farm, not I Farm as you knew it. So we trained at Score. Yeah. And then I Farm was a grass venue at the time. Was it? Yeah. So we had 3 pitches over there, and it was like my little world. Yeah. I was the only full-time member of staff. Right. I used to clean the toilets, paint it when it needed painted. But it was mine.
Don't
you know
you
what
think
I mean?
that's give you the grounding that you've got now?
The grounding, but also like if someone scratched the tiles on the showers, like I'd be fuming because it was like me that was going to have to put it right. So
I don't think there's any like you look at some of the biggest banks in the world. It happens less and less. But some of those CEOs started in a post room or a mail room.
Brilliant.
And like those type of people, like just get it.
Yeah.
Not only that, they get it as a company, but they've got the work ethic. But they just there's so much missing now where companies they cut out all the Indians and just have loads of chiefs.
Yeah.
But what you're doing is you're actually cutting out all the knowledge from that company. Same as a football club, right?
Yeah.
Like you knew everything that went on, as you say, whether it was, trap 3 needs bog roll or there's a good left back in the under 15s.
I remember someone saying to me, "Do you flush the toilets once a week?" And I'd be like, "What's that got to do with youth development?" But if I didn't do it, I'd turn up and the toilets would look grubby on a Saturday.
No, but we'll turn you off over there.
But then on a Saturday afternoon, I'd get to the stadium and the thing would be like, "Right, boy, go around the pitch, make sure the boys are looking after the multi-ball properly." Involved in everything. And I think you said there, I love the fact that anything in football can be related elsewhere.
Yeah, 100%.
Is that people have got a story.
Yeah,
and they've got a story that is relatable to that industry and that business that people are working
also,
at.
Ross, what it allows you to do, it allows you to go into any football club and find someone at any level and you can relate to them.
There's a guy, I won't throw his name because I won't embarrass him, but there's a guy who works at West Ham, he's been there 30 years and he's done foot in the community and he's done the job that he's doing now. And some days I'll just go in, open the door, and he probably thinks, "Oh God, here he comes," and I'll go on, best player you've ever seen at the club, or like, go on, who was the hardest one, who got on your nerves, like because he's got something to tell me. I don't need to know about like the coaching session or the it's the stories that I'm passionate about. So I think that was for me. By the time I left, like even like weeks before I left, we signed Moses Odebajo. Like we all know the story of Moses,
brilliant player.
Him getting off the train and getting nicked by the old bill because he didn't have no train fare, and having to talk the old bill down to let him train. All them sorts of little stuff.
I didn't know that one.
Yeah, it's a brilliant. He tells a story. He didn't have no money. He didn't want to let anyone down. I didn't want to tell anyone, so he jumped the train to Newbury Park.
Yeah,
and as he got off, the police were there, or whatever they're called, the transport police.
Yeah.
Got him, and he was like, "I've got a trial at Leyton Orient." So he come through the gate, and me and Andy Edwards met him. We signed him. Wayne Burnett had already told him he wasn't going to get a scholarship.
Yeah.
Me and Andy managed to talk the old bill down, put him into the 18s on a scholarship, and then see the rest is history as to where he's gone. But
great career.
By the time I walked away from that club, like Harry Buterman, who's gone to have a career as an under 18.
Where's Harry now? I know he come out of Sutton at the end of the year.
Yeah, he come out of Sutton and he's out. Is he at Woking?
Right, okay.
But like that for me, to be able to look at a professional football club and it's not mine anymore, but feel like it was mine at the time, and know that I was responsible for so many of them players. Was incredible.
Where's he? Cyprus, Greece?
Yeah, he's gone to Greece now.
That's
I think.
it.
Yeah. But yeah, so that was incredible, incredibly passionate, and then obviously I went away for a few years, and good on a selfish part that I walked back into the club when it was in ground zero after we all know what happened.
Did you enjoy the experience at Spurs? Did you go and do the same job? Was it going back into the community?
No. So I went back in and I did like a role that was coach development.
Right.
And then it was
coaching the coaches sort of thing?
Right. It was pre-EPPP, so I didn't have all these people per phase. What I did was I managed the 7s to 11s bracket as well as that coach development role.
Okay. So you oversaw the teams, and then you oversaw the coaches that were responsible for them teams.
And then the development centres that fed into them as well. So you had a pathway for the players, but pathway for coaches.
Decent.
What I got from working at Spurs was, in terms of the level and expertise and knowledge and experience, was the people that I worked around. Dean Rastrick, who's obviously gone on to manage Tottenham's academy and now at Norwich. Alex Inglethorpe, brilliant, 12 years at Liverpool. Someone I still speak to loads now. Chris Ramsey, like for me, one of the elite player developers in the country, unquestionably. John McDermott, who speaks for himself in terms of the job that he's doing at the FA. Perry Suckling, unbelievable wealth of experience as a goalkeeping coach. I don't know if I'll ever get
that group
5 experts like that anywhere. So to go into that period of my career where I was like 28 and only knew Leyton Orient, to whoa, this is proper, you know. So brilliant, invaluable experiences.
I know obviously times have changed, Ross, and again, big new shiny stadium, getting into Europe, massive club. Was there that massive gulf then? Like, was it noticeable going from little old Leyton Orient to there was?
Vast difference.
Even back then.
Yeah, vast difference in obviously you had the wealth once you started looking at like Spurs Lodge we were at the time. So I left Tottenham at the time when they were moving into the place they're in now. So I went through the phase of working at the transition period from the Spurs Lodge. We trained at Brentford, and that was our Sunday morning venue. And then and then they moved into the new place. So I experienced the old bit of it, but definitely a drastic difference. I think the depth for me of going from like the top players at Leyton Orient at the time could probably have played for most clubs in the country per age group. Not necessarily the best players, but coped. Middle bracket, good players, pick them out when they're playing on a Sunday morning for Orient or for a club team. And then the bottom bracket of the group, probably good club players. Whereas at Tottenham, you just have more, better players in depth, which you should do.
And it's probably the same now, right? You got the Cat Ones that have got 3-4 teams. Like about his old age group, whatever, and Orient would have one. There wasn't always that much difference in the quality. As you say, the volume of those kids would be more. So that was definitely. But like for me, the knowledge and expertise that I was working around every day, and then like when I look back, and by the way, I'm not trying to put my name to any of these, but Tom Carroll, Alex Pritchard, Harry Kane, Stephen Corker. Like there's loads of others. But Poku, didn't he, went to Orient? I loved him.
Like loads of Adam Smith. Like proper. And then obviously, like I could walk out the other door and Luka Modric, Peter Crouch, Van der Vaart, Gareth Bale. I see him go from that kid who couldn't get in the team, couldn't win a game, to being like the Real Madrid superstar. You know what I mean? And I was so fortunate. I lived that Champions League period, you know, when he just ran riot and done so well. So unbelievable experience.
I always remember.
So like that fitted into that gap between me leaving the Orient and then with one or two other experiences at Bournemouth and Swindon, going back to the club when it was ground zero, you know.
And obviously you touched on Swindon there. That was part of Luke Williams is at Swansea now. Is that part of how did you get in at?
So obviously at that time when I went there, I was.
So you was working at Spurs at the time?
So I'd been at Bournemouth, done the 18s. I left Bournemouth and done some recruitment work at Norwich. And then after that, I went back and I was running like one of those 16 to 18 college programs for Tottenham.
Okay.
Brilliant it was. It's like Coach Carter.
Yeah.
Just beating each other up every day.
It was like the what would you call it? Like the old pass schemes.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And he used to turn every day. Debden College I was based at, and I'd sit in the classroom and like 3 of the boys would turn up out of 35.
Yeah.
We'd get one team out on a Wednesday because the others just couldn't be bothered to turn up.
Yeah.
But they were nutters, but they were like my nutters.
Yeah,
we built up a brilliant relationship. Like, don't get me wrong, some weeks you'd turn up and there'd just be a full-scale war on people fighting and that, and you'd be like, what am I doing here? But it was brilliant. I loved it.
Again, it's different experiences.
Oh my God! Like, and do you know what? Every now and again now I get a text message from one of them. Not many. How you doing, Ross? Like, some of them have just come out of prison. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, still checking in.
Sounds silly. Did any of them boys go even
play
the league or
no? I tried to help a couple of them, but they just weren't quite serious enough.
Nah.
But they, I used to say that they're a bunch of wrong uns, but they were my wrong uns.
Yeah.
And I loved them to bits.
But
So I've done
again,
that.
if you've dealt with that, really, you ain't going to be worried about going into a changing room.
Do you know what? And I used to tell some of the stories
like,
about the fights and that when we were sitting having lunch at Swindon, and the boys would be looking at me going, Is he for real? Like, but it was brilliant. So I did that for 18 months. And what we had from that period was Lingy had been ill right after his Torquay experience.
Yeah.
And I got him some work doing some of the soccer schools, and he used to come and help me one day a week in different colleges within the Tottenham bracket. And Mark Cooper had been sacked at Swindon. Yeah. Luke was obviously his assistant and stayed and was doing the team with Lee Power at the time.
Had he finished his career there then? Is that how he got it? Yeah.
No, Luke had been at Brighton doing their 23s and through different networks of people.
Right.
It ended up at, I did see what they've done. They've done really well for Brighton 23s against Tottenham a couple of times.
Okay.
At that time, they had like Massimo Luongo, Alex Pritchard, Grant Hall, all on loan at Swindon from Tottenham. So I don't know if that was part of the connection, but Luke ended up as like the coach with Mark Cooper. Mark had been sacked, and Lingy got the job as the manager. Yeah. Luke stayed as assistant. Yeah. And I went with him as the coach. So it's strange, really, because I'd obviously had, I don't know how many years of knowing and working with Martin, and coaching Sam as a little boy, to Luke being one of my best mates when we left school. So like the dynamic of the three of us really came together. Yeah. So yeah, strange experience because Martin was there for 8 weeks. We went there bottom of the league. Sure. I was talking to someone from Swindon the other day, and they were saying it's the lowest points tally, and they're in a very similar state now. Yeah. We were in League One. We went there at bottom of the league, and Lingy had like 6 games, 7 games, and we done really well. We beat Dean Smith's Walsall team. We had a really good run. Went away and beat Chesterfield 5, and ended up doing really well. And then Martin went down with mental health again. Sure. So after 8 weeks, me and Luke were sort of sitting in the canteen, looking at each other, going, "Whoa, hold on a minute, we're now in charge at a League One club."
Did you embrace that, or was it a little bit
really? Yeah, we had to. And do you know what? Because we'd got off on a good start, and Luke was still doing loads of the coaching, even though Martin was like the manager of picking the team as such. We didn't feel as though loads would change. Yeah. So I just had a big role in supporting Luke and helping him with everything that he needed to do. He's a genius, the guy, and I just needed to make sure that I give him everything in terms of the support that me and the other staff could give him to do what he does best. And we've done really well. We got really close to the playoffs at one stage. We actually got spanked 4-0 by Wigan on the telly. If we'd won, we'd have gone in the playoffs. Right. We lost. John O'Beaker got injured, and then that was our season. Really, we finished like 14th. But
I know you've always spoken about him very, very well. But a friend of yours as well, went to watch Notts County when he was in charge. He was in charge of Notts County. Yeah. And he said the way that he sort of managed from the technical area and the football they played, just said it was unreal. Yeah. Just said he like what a manager is. He said like won't be there long, and obviously true enough, ended up at. If Luke's got the quality of players to work with, which he obviously did at Notts County, and then we saw the gap between what the National League can be like and then what the top of League 2 looks like. Yeah. I don't think there's a drastic change between the run of the mill. Yeah, and it definitely isn't between the top of the National League. But once you get in there, the top 6, top 8, there is a drastic difference. Yeah. But obviously, that transition, even though they were competitive in their budget, he had competitive players for the level and still maintained to do a really good job.
if he has that, and even now at a club like Swansea, I'm convinced that he can be anything you want to if he's given the resources to do it.
I know you've had a big influence on Lawrence Vigouroux's career. Obviously, you had him at Spurs. Did he call you before going there? Or
To be honest, since he's been there, he don't need me no more, so I don't have to speak about it. But no, I've the reason we got Loz at Leyton Orient was because I saw Loz in his college program when he was 17.
I remember.
So that college program that I'm talking about, one of my coaches at the time at Spurs was, when I was there the first time, was doing one of those colleges, and he said to me, come and watch my team. This goal is a joke. And I watched him, and the next day I went in and said to Alex Ingleford, we've got to have this kid in. He's under 17, he's took him in, he obviously got his scholarship and his pro deal. Then he went to Liverpool, but I'd always spoken to Loz.
So he weren't fighting in the class?
He what?
He weren't scrapping in the class, no?
No, not that it wasn't part of that, no, it was a different one, weren't my one. Yes, I always said, and then my first game at Swindon, I walked in, met him at services on the way up to Wigan. Yeah. And as I walked into the services, he started laughing. What are you doing here? I was like, I'm coming as a coach. And it was just after he'd been done for getting the fine and turning it all into pennies and stuff like that. So they'd sent him back and he'd just come back. Loz has always been a donut. He won't have no problem with me saying that. He's matured now and he's a top man. But we forever stayed in touch. So even after I left Swindon, he went through a bit of a tough time. No one wanted to touch him because a number of people were bad-mouthing him and he couldn't get a club. And he went out to Chile just to play.
Yeah.
And
because he got on the Chile national team, didn't he?
And that's what happened. While he was out there and he couldn't get a club, they said, look, stay here and we'll find you somewhere to play. But as soon as the opportunity come to sign him, Dino was retiring. We had to have him. I had to have him. And obviously now the rest is history for him. I'm so proud of him. I love the fact that he's now showing any doubters how good he is.
I think before we get on to Leyton Orient, the one recurring theme I think since we've been speaking, Ross, is that old players or old people that played for you still get in contact. I know we spoke, when did we speak? Last Saturday you was on the way to do the radio at Swindon.
MK Dons,
I was going to watch Orient with Bert, and we spoke about a player that played for you at Leyton Orient. But he'd give you a ring. Do you take pride in that? Do you take pride in that? The boys and men are still calling you up for a chat and checking in or bouncing ideas off you?
Yeah, it means everything. Like, of course, we all have to earn a living, and I want to earn as much money as I possibly can. Do you know what I mean? To live a nice life and to provide for my kids. But if there's a thing that comes or runs it close, actually means more. In terms of what you get out of it is those relationships. And I said it about stories as well. That's what makes life worth living, doesn't it?
Mate.
And I think that's the thing. Like, I probably take things to heart too much when people don't call you or you don't hear from me. But then when I get the text from, talking about Loz, so we use him as the example, but when I get the text from Loz to say, signing for a championship, by the way, I'm signing for Burnley, oh my God, I remember when you were scrambling around and like all the power, all the belief to him. I love it, but it means so much. Like I say, and do you know what? Like a couple of weeks ago, I went out for a beer with a mate of mine. Walked in the bar, and there was a boy that had been at Orient as an under-9. Straight over. He's 28 now. Like them things as well. Do you know what I mean? So it ain't even just the superhuman stories. It's relationships, isn't it?
I think doing what you're doing and sort of some of the roles you play, I think that's got to be the best thing, right? Like I haven't. It's a different angle, but even now, when I was on the way out in non-league and the boys were starting, even now that the same feeling. If you get a text or they ask you, say, I've just done a podcast about a boy that come on a work experience loan at Luton, and we had a good relationship, and tried to help him and push him to go and play in the States, and he's gone and done that. Those type of things, I think, and make the job worthwhile, because let's have it right. There's some great times in football, but there's also some real shit, right? And we'll probably get onto that talking about Leyton Orient. But it's one of the only industries where every man and his dog can throw pelters at you if they want, or say what they want, and like that side of things must just give you a real sense of pride.
It's the best, and like I say, boys phoning you about their career, and I've got this chance to go to this club or this club, and them wanting your advice is invaluable. It's priceless. But then the other side of it, like I say, just seeing boys that are now working wherever they're working and knowing that they've done all right for themselves,
Yeah.
that you coached when they was whatever age they were, it means like an incredible amount.
Oh, amazing, mate. I think that's one of the biggest sort of recommendations, or sort of, worth, job worth that you could ever have.
Can't put a price on it.
No, you can't, mate. And as I say, look at them players now playing in the Championship, and Loz had some experience in the Premier League last year. I just think massive kudos to you, mate.
I used to say to him about like winning, and when they won the league under Richie, like I used to say to him, "Blimey, Loz, like I brought you to this club because I knew you'd do well. Like it used to be my club, and now it's yours."
Yeah. He's a great character as well.
Yeah, he's the best.
He definitely the fans warm to him.